Rain drummed softly against the cracked bus stop shelter while 12-year-old Lily Harper sat perfectly still on the freezing metal bench, clutching the strap of her faded pink backpack like it was the only thing keeping her together. She had been told to wait. Just stay here. For a little while, her mother had whispered earlier that morning, pressing a trembling kiss against Lily's forehead. I'll come back soon. But Lily knew something was wrong long before the hours began to pass. A mother's goodbye is different when it carries fear inside it. Blind since birth, Lily experienced the world through sound. Temperature, breathing, silence. She noticed things sighted people ignored. The shakiness in her mother's hands, the way her voice cracked on simple words, the lingering hug that lasted too long. Now evening had fallen and the city around her had changed. The cheerful daytime chatter was gone. In its place came hurried footsteps, distant sirens, car engines spraying rainwater across the street. Strangers passed by without stopping. Some lowered their voices with pity. When they noticed the white cane resting beside her, most simply kept walking. Lily tried not to cry, because crying made people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people usually left. Her stomach twisted painfully. She hadn't eaten since morning, but she was more afraid of leaving the bench than she was of hunger. What if her mother came back and couldn't find her? So she waited, and waited, and waited. By nearly 10 o'clock, the rain had turned icy cold. That was when Daniel Brooks first noticed her. He almost missed the bus stop entirely. After 14 exhausting hours driving delivery trucks across Chicago, all Daniel wanted was to get home to his tiny apartment, microwave leftover pasta, and fall asleep before his 6-year-old son woke him at dawn asking for dinosaur pancakes. But as his headlights swept past the shelter, he caught sight of the small figure sitting alone. Something about it felt wrong. A child shouldn't be alone that late. Daniel sighed, exhausted, then drove another 50 feet before guilt hit him hard enough to make him curse under his breath. He pulled over. Rain soaked through his jacket as he jogged toward the shelter. "Hey there," he said gently, careful not to sound frightening. "You okay?" Lily straightened instantly at the unfamiliar voice. Adults usually sounded impatient when speaking to abandoned children. This man sounded concerned. "I'm waiting for my mom," she answered quietly. Daniel glanced around the empty street. "How long have you been here?" "A while." He crouched slightly when he noticed the cane beside her, and suddenly everything inside him tightened. "What's your name?" "Lily." "I'm Daniel." She nodded politely. Daniel checked nearby stores, hoping maybe a parent was searching frantically nearby, but everything was closing. No one recognized her description. His chest grew heavier with every passing minute. Finally, he returned to the shelter holding 2 hot chocolates from a gas station. "I got one with extra marshmallows," he said. Lily hesitated. "My mom says not to take things from strangers." "That's smart," Daniel replied softly. "Then maybe don't think of me as a stranger yet." Something in his tone made her smile faintly for the first time all day. He sat beside her while steam rose from the cups between them. After another hour, Daniel contacted the police. And that was when the truth shattered both of them. There had been a car accident that morning on Interstate 90. A woman matching her mother's. Description had been taken to the hospital unconscious. She hadn't survived. Daniel felt Lily go completely still beside him as the officer gently explained. No screaming, no dramatic collapse, just silence. The kind that breaks your heart far worse. "She promised she'd come back," Lily whispered. Daniel swallowed hard, unable to answer. Because sometimes life destroys promises without asking permission. Child Protective Services arrived shortly after midnight. Lily sat quietly while adults discussed. Paperwork around her like she wasn't even there. Temporary placement, emergency housing, foster availability. Daniel watched her small fingers, gripping the backpack, tighter and tighter until her knuckles trembled. Then the social worker mentioned a group home nearly 40 miles away, and something inside Daniel refused to let it happen. "She can stay with us tonight," he blurted. The social worker blinked. "Sir, are you related?" "No." "Family friend?" "No." She looked skeptical. Daniel rubbed his tired face. "Look, I know this sounds crazy, but she's scared, she's grieving, and she doesn't need fluorescent lights and strangers tonight." The social worker studied him carefully. "Do you have children?" One son? Single parent? Daniel nodded. After a long pause, the woman finally sighed. One night, she said. That single night changed everything. Daniel's apartment was tiny. The heater rattled constantly. Half the kitchen light didn't work. But when Lily stepped inside, a little boy immediately raced across the room wearing dinosaur pajamas. Dad, you're late! Then he noticed Lily and stopped. Who's she? Daniel knelt beside him. This is Lily. She's going to stay with us tonight. 6-year-old Max looked at Lily for exactly 2 seconds before grabbing her hand. I have chicken nuggets, he announced proudly. Lily laughed softly despite herself. It was the first real laugh she'd had since morning. That night, Daniel overheard something from the hallway that nearly brought him to tears, Max whispering under blankets. Are you scared? A little, Lily admitted. That's okay, Max replied. I still get scared when Dad turns off the bathroom light. A pause. Then Lily quietly asked, What do you do? Dad says brave people can still be scared, so we just keep going anyway. Daniel stood frozen outside the room, eyes burning, because those were words he used for Max. After his wife abandoned them 3 years earlier, he never imagined another child would need them too. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, and somewhere in the middle of grief and chaos, Lily slowly became part of their little family. Daniel learned how to braid hair by watching internet tutorials at 2 in the morning. Max learned to describe colors to Lily in hilarious ways. Yellow feels like French fries, he explained once. Then what's blue? Lily asked. Cold popsicles and superhero capes. Daniel worked extra shifts to afford a better school for visually impaired students. He skipped meals sometimes so the kids wouldn't notice how tight money had become. But he never complained. Not once. Then came the phone call that threatened to destroy everything. A wealthy couple from another state wanted to adopt Lily. They had money, a huge home, private tutors, resources Daniel could never provide. The social worker gently explained that they were considered the better long-term option. Daniel nodded politely during the meeting, then went home and cried alone in the bathroom so the children wouldn't hear him. Because love doesn't always win against stability on paper. The night before the court hearing, Lily found him sitting quietly at the kitchen table. You're sad, she said softly. Daniel forced a smile. I'm okay. You do that thing with your breathing when you lie. He looked down. Blindness had made Lily notice hearts more clearly than faces. I just want you to have the best life possible, he admitted. She stepped closer carefully. Do you know what my favorite sound is? What? Your keys opening the apartment door. Daniel's throat tightened instantly. Because every time I hear them, she continued, voice trembling, I know somebody came back for me. Silence filled the kitchen. Painful, beautiful, real. At the hearing the next morning, the judge reviewed financial records, living conditions, educational opportunities. The wealthy couple looked perfect. Daniel looked exhausted. Then the judge turned toward Lily. Do you understand what adoption means, sweetheart? Yes. And do you have a preference? The courtroom became completely still. Lily reached for Daniel's hand instantly. I already found my dad. Even the court reporter wiped tears from her eyes. 3 months later, the adoption became official. Daniel Brooks, overworked delivery driver, exhausted single father, owner of exactly 3 decent shirts, officially became Lily's father forever. That evening, they celebrated with cheap pizza and a chocolate cake. Max accidentally dropped before dinner. Nobody cared, because for the first time in a very long time, all 3 of them finally belonged somewhere. Later that night, Lily sat between Daniel and Max on the couch while rain tapped softly against the apartment windows, the same sound she'd heard at the bus stop months earlier. But everything felt different now. Back then, rain had sounded lonely. Now it sounded like home. Daniel wrapped one arm around each child as Max slowly drifted asleep against his shoulder, and Lily smiled quietly in the darkness. Not because life had become perfect, not because pain had disappeared, but because sometimes, in a world where people walk past suffering every single day, one exhausted stranger chooses to stop, and that choice can change everything forever.